Today I will give a quick introduction and review of your 2019-2020 NFIRS analytical charts. We've added a few charts and we combined the 2019 data with the 2020 data. So we'll start at these three buttons. You have the ability to download and print your charts. You can share your charts, and we'll look at in a large screen to review the charts. So we've plotted your incident responses in a number of ways, and we start by plotting the responses by hour of the day. And you can see between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. is your high volume part of the day. So by hovering over the year, you can see the data for that individual year, and you can see the number and highlight it. And that follows through for all the charts. We then broke down your responses by category, and for both years, 2019, 2020, rescue calls dominate, followed by false calls and service calls. We then broke that down by percent so you could see how that compares to the national and Massachusetts average. So it's in 2019 and 2020, your rescue calls were 77%. In Massachusetts, the average is 60%, and the national is 64%. We went and broke down the 100 series fire response. In 2020, it was dominated by natural vegetation fires, which you had 31. We broke that down further to look at your structural fires, and we broke it down to see if you had mutual aid and you received and given, or had no aid. We then went and broke down your responses by month. The month of July seems to be your highest incident response time, and February your lowest volume times. We broke that down further by taking the average, the monthly average, and then we subtracted each month and plotted the variation from the average. And you can see in February of 2019 you had 60 less responses than the average, and in 2019 in July you had 71 more. And you can see the trend that from January through May you have less volume, and it starts increases in June and July and August from the average. We then plotted your responses by day. Friday seems to be your highest day and Sunday your lowest day. And we plotted that same variation by the daily average. And you can see that at the end of the week, you have a higher volume, and it typically have lower volume at the beginning of the week. And we summed it all up with heat maps, and we plotted the distribution by day and time. And you can see in the middle of the day you have your highest volume highlighted by red, and the lowest volume at the end of the day. And we charted those values so that you can actually see at on any day and what time you can see how many incidents you responded to in those years. We then went and plotted your fire apparatus response times. You can see the standard, the NFPA 1710 standard, is 90% of runs within 6 minutes. And you were just under at 88 and 89% for your 2019 and 2020 runs. We did that for EMS, and in 19 you were above the average and slightly under for 2020. We then plotted all your runs together. We combined them to see and plotted those as percentage. In 2019, you can see 8% were greater than 6 minutes, and 2020 almost 12%. We now added a concurrent call breakdown for 2020, and what this graph does is tell you how many calls were already happening when a call began. So you can see when one call was already happening, you had 1,114 calls coming in. When a second call happened, 394 times, and so forth. We plotted that by percentage, so you can see that 50% of the time you had a response with no other calls happening, and 33% of the time another call happened when one was already happening. And then this is just the total of the number of single runs and runs when other calls were happening. We looked at your mutual aid, and we did it by years, and you can see aid given, received by years, and by what town, and the number of aid given or received. And we charted that, so you have a summary chart of those values. And then we just totaled up all the aid for the 2 years, and you can see mutual aid in 2019 was 108, and 85 was mutual aid given. And those values reversed. You gave less mutual aid. You received less mutual aid in 2020. Life support dominated by ALS. We have your ISO rating chart. Your value 3 is in the top 10 percentile nationally, and the top 30 percentile in Massachusetts. So we looked at your apparatus responses. We wanted to see how many apparatus you sent out for each response. And for your suppression, you can see 541 times you sent out one vehicle, 176 times you sent out 2 suppression vehicles, and 42 times you sent out 3. And we plotted that for your other apparatus and your EMS also. And so we plotted how many times multiple apparatus went out, so you can see suppression and other dominated in 2019 with 122 times, and in 220 it was 93. So that's a list of how many times multiple apparatus went out for a incident. And then we just summed up the total times the apparatus went out, and that was dominated by your EMS in both years. So we did an apparatus run summary, and I did 2 charts for 2019 and 2020 because I didn't really know how to cross-reference the name, and I didn't want to make any mistakes. So this is 2 charts for the years. Your apparatus repair summary, and this goes by closed work orders. So Medic 1 had 20 closed work orders, Medic 2 13, and so forth. So then we went into your permitting and inspection summary. So this is a chart of your permitting as entered into StationSMARTS. Burn permits were the most at 255. Then we did your inspection summary charts, and you have 2 charts because you did a number of inspections. Smoke 26F inspections were 75, which were the most. And then final chart for other inspections. And then your fire prevention summaries as put into StationSMARTS, radio box administration being the highest. So then we looked at your training hours, and we broke it down by your groups, or staff grouping, officers training by person, and the number of hours that person or staff trained. Did that for your firefighter, EMT, and medics. And then we did it for your call firefighters, EMT, and medics. And then we charted out your training, and what we did was, this is shift training hours. You had shift training, and I assume all firefighters trained, And so we listed that and the training that you took. Then we went into the course summary. These are the courses you took and how many hours your staff trained on those modules or out in the field. So you had 2 charts. You did a number of training courses. And this is the breakdown of each group, how many hours they actually trained, officers, call, and your regular staff. And then we listed your active roster service time. So we took each individual and figured out how many years they have worked for Fairhaven. Then we looked at your staff experience, and you can see you have 18 individuals that have 5 years of experience or less, and then so forth. And then we concluded with a roster broken up by the groups. These are just your active roster. That sums up all the chats we have, and if you have any questions, please call us.